is 6:31. And I would like to call to order the November 7th meeting of the Manchester Select Board. Roll call vote of those in attendance. John Round?
Yes. Here.
Kathy Bellata?
Yes, here.
Brian Solacey?
Yes.
Ann Harrison?
Yes.
And I'm Becky Jakes. Okay, first of all, any public comments of items not on the agenda? See any hands raised?
No.
Okay, seeing none, moving right along. We'll go ahead and get started with the continuation of the tree hearing. I'm sorry to say Tom is not feeling well. But he did recommend after he and I guess Corey looked at the tree that it is quite diseased and does need to come down. Wait a minute. This is open the continuation of the tree hearing of 41 Pleasant Street. May I have a motion?
Move to reopen the hearing.
Second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Ann Harrison?
Yes.
Brian Solacey?
Yes.
Kathy Bellata?
Yes.
John Round?
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes. Okay, so I'll repeat. Tom is unfortunately ill, but did state that upon inspection, the tree is quite ailing and should be taken down. So may I have a motion to approve the removal of the tree at 41 Pleasant Street?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by John Round, seconded by Ann Harrison. Roll call vote. John Round?
Yes.
Kathy Bellata?
Yes.
Brian Solacey?
Yes.
Ann Harrison?
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes, it's unanimous. Okay, committee interview of Tom Parkins for the FinCom.
Before we go to the interview, may I ask a question?
Sure.
I apologize for not asking this when we received the resignation of Mr. Weld. Was this position posted through social media or the newspaper, the opening? 'Cause I looked for it and I subscribed to everything and it's probably
That's a
there
good
somewhere, but
question.
I couldn't see it.
I don't, I'm not recalling, so I don't, perhaps not.
That's a good point.
I'm a little
Procedurally, it
concerned
should.
procedurally, I mean,
Yep.
nothing about the candidate in front of us seems wonderful, but we're striving for transparency,
No.
So you announced the vacancy, but I don't know if we published it.
yeah. Because for some of the other ones, we would post on,
Right.
the Twitter and the Facebook, hey,
Yeah.
there's an open position, would you like to volunteer? And
No, I think that's a good point. And it should follow normal procedures. Is Mr. Parkins on? I see.
Yep.
Right, and Sarah has her hand up, but let's, I think we should not hear from Mr. Parkins at this time until we've had an opportunity for others, or since
Well,
he's
you
here,
can-
go
you can-
ahead.
You can go ahead with the
I have
interview
no
and then.
issue with
Can I
interviewing
speak to
him.
that?
Yeah, I have no issue with interviewing him as long.
Just a moment, please, Sarah.
Yeah, if he's here, I think it's fine if we speak with him. I just would suggest that we have an open period where we call for volunteers for just maybe a week. I mean,
Yep.
and just, if anyone else is interested, they throw their hat in the ring and think we could interview them at our next meeting.
And how about the rest of the board? How does the rest of the board feel? John?
Yeah, when is Mark's resignation effective? When he's
It's
replaced?
effective now.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Okay, so the finance committee is down.
Mm-hmm.
Can we hear from Sarah?
First.
Yeah, but I want to hear from the board
Okay.
I
first.
want to hear what Sarah has to say, honestly.
I would like to hear from Sarah.
Okay, Sarah Melish?
Yeah, so the finance committee has never advertised its positions on social media. So if you're now changing the rules, that does put us at a disadvantage. We start our budget sessions with the department heads next week. It's crucial for us to have a new member on board to participate through the full round of the budget discussions. Mark did a lot of due diligence, finding somebody to replace him to fill the balance of his term, which is up in June of 2023. So this is a short-term
Right.
situation that we're trying to cover, and I've never been told as a committee chair that when I have a vacancy, there's a certain procedure I need to follow regarding putting things on social media, putting it on the town website. It clearly was in a select board meeting that Mark had designed.
Mhm.
No, typically that's been done at your level, not the committee level.
So, because that's the cause for my confusion, is that I have seen other vacancies posted, not just on social media, so it's not a social media thing, but in the newspaper, there have been calls for volunteers. And so I'm just, this is a really important committee, and I just feel that whatever we do, it should be consistent. So while this may be a consistent process used in the past for finance, it's not consistent with what we've been doing for some other committees, I think. And I just feel if one of our goals is to be transparent and improve that relationship with the town, this is another way of being transparent, is asking people to volunteer.
I think consistency, at least at this point, has been, if there's no obvious candidates or nobody's raising their hand, you start to publicize. So I think that is probably the process we've gone through. It's not like it's automatic, there's an opening, you advertise whether you have people or not. If somebody's raising their hand, I think they are filling that position in all of the committees.
For appointments.
I might suggest that
They're
when we
appointed.
start advertising, because basically we're begging.
Well.
I wouldn't go.
No,
Generally, that it's a committee that's down a couple of people and has no candidates.
right.
So, and once again, I'm just going back on my professional life, is that when employees mentioned a lack of transparency around promotions or how positions are filled, they usually made mention of the fact that position openings were not posted openly and transparently. So I will just make that, once again, I have no issue with the candidate in front of us. It's just about the process, and is it consistent with the values we articulated, or I thought we articulated.
Anne?
I see a difference between a professional paid position and someplace, and a volunteer who is stepping up and who has been frankly recruited.
Understand?
And we do need to speak up just a little bit.
Okay.
Sorry.
Understand.
I might make the point with Ann that maybe this falls into the policy category. I think we're probably silent on this, but maybe something should be put together along those lines. I'm not necessarily advocating what particular process it should be at this point, but maybe this
I think that would be welcome.
speaks to that.
We recently approved a policy on appointments,
Yeah,
so perhaps we need to
Me too.
revisit it.
put an addendum on that or something, yeah.
And then this position is just fulfilling the balance of a term, correct? So it comes back up in June of '23 anyway.
Yeah.
So at this point, we're kind of under the gun. I think what Sarah's saying, we're under the gun as far as getting the process started. He was recruited, and then I think that as we revisit the policy for '23.
So I agree with that. My question would be though, or my understanding is, if we appoint this person for the balance of Mr. Wells' term, that the position doesn't automatically open up at the end of that term, or does it? We don't publicize that it's open, right? It's just.
This one it will end in June of '23.
And will it be publicized?
So, well,
That's
that's
the question.
to John's point, in terms of tightening this up, policies on appointments. Greg, do we have any formalized policy on that?
Yes.
I mean, board, is it consistent board to board?
it's a general policy for all appointments.
Which,
In terms of publicizing.
No, there is no mention of
No.
publicizing, it's just that, how do we go about appointing?
So then, as John said, do we need to formalize this, tighten it up and include it in the policy?
I think so.
Okay. But I think at this point, I think I think we can go ahead and go forward with this, in my opinion.
I agree, and I would just like a firm date, Greg, by when we expect to have some follow-up on this. Kind of, by when could we expect to see, some draft addendum to the policy?
So that's our policy people.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I don't want to leave it open-ended is my
Right.
only point. I'm not in a rush to see it next week, I just don't want to leave it open-ended, so.
Okay, so now I'm going to come back to this in just a moment. And, but before I do, we need to go back and close the public hearing for the tree hearing. So may I have a motion to close the public hearing
So
of the 41 Pleasant Street tree hearing? Moved by Brian Solacey,
Second.
seconded by Kathy Bellata. Roll call vote. John Round,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Brian Solacey,
yes,
Ann Harrison.
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes, it's unanimous. So now, I am going to make a note, and I will reach out to, or can John
Well-
and
Well,
Ann, okay, great. So knowing that,
I think there are two things that have been mentioned.
yes,
One is making open positions public, and the other is, do we consider the end of someone's term to be an open position? In the past, we have usually just reappointed.
reappointed.
And this has come up, I'd like a little sense of what the board would
Okay.
like us to do.
I'm making notes. Open positions. Published. May I ask that we think on this a little bit and then individually email Ann on this and individually email John so that we're not in violation of open meeting laws, quorum, et cetera, and give some feedback on that question and do it within the next week. How's that sound?
That would be one.
Is everybody amenable, agreeable with that? Okay, now going forward. Tom Parkins, how are you today, this evening?
Just fine.
you lost interest.
I know. You're still interested?
I'm still here.
Yay. Okay, we do have some information, but why don't you tell us a little bit about you and the strengths that you would bring to FinCom, please?
Well, I'd like to think I've already sort of contributed here by clarifying town policy on committee members, so there's what. My wife and I live on, right in Manchester, on Woodholm Circle. We've been there for 12 years. I have two daughters in town. One is in college, freshman. Both have attended Manchester Essex High School. I run a financial services firm. It's my own company. Been in financial services since I graduated Michigan State back in 1983. 11 years at Fidelity, 7 years at Schwab, a couple of years at other spots, and then about 15 years ago started my own independent financial services firm here. My office is in Hamilton. So I think I bring a lot of expertise in that regard. I also am chair of the finance committee for my church. I think, to be honest, my shortcomings are a bit of naivete with respect to town politics and how all the committees work together and everybody gets things done, so a bit of hand-holding there is probably gonna be needed, but I think, my expert experience probably outweighs that, so that's kind of a short synopsis of who I am. 62 years old, if anybody wants to know that. And ready to help Mark out and complete his term.
Thank you. I'll go around to the board members now. John Round?
Okay, Tom, thanks for raising your hand. I won't ask just how much Mark twisted your arm on this. I assume you came through him, and you know him. Is this your first time through working with a public board? And what prompted you to do this?
It is, it's my first time.
Okay. What prompted you to do this besides Mark's suggestion, I assume?
Well, it's mostly for Mark, to be honest with you, but, I also look at it as an opportunity to kind of get my toes wet and see if there's something I can contribute to the town. So, like I said, my learning curve of the town politics and the interactions of the various committees and so forth inside of the town is probably fairly steep, but it's an opportunity for me to kind of take a look and see where I can contribute.
Well, we all appreciate your interest very much.
Kathy Bellata?
Thank you again. I reiterate my thanks as well for stepping up, and as somebody who's also new to this, I understand where you're coming from. But I thank you for agreeing to serve. And I just have one question. You certainly have quite the financial background. I was wondering if you also had any operational leadership experience, specifically leading large organizations, large budgets yourself. That's a little bit different than financial services per se, so I just wanted to get a better understanding of your background.
Well, I've never really been on the management side of the financial services business. I've been more on the sales, product management, production side, and general management for my own firm. From a management perspective, I don't have that experience. But again, I think, financial services and understanding of the financial services and how numbers work is probably my strong suit here, so.
And that includes like FP&A type forecasting, et cetera, in your financial services work?
That work, part of what I do for my company is I manage a handful of 401k plans in the area at the institutional level. So I'm actively involved with helping them in their budgeting and working through the important benefit, the retirement benefit, and fitting that into their budgets. Many of the organizations, I can't name names, but many of them are right in Manchester by the Sea and a couple others in local communities around the area. So, there is some institutional management experience and some budgeting in that regard, if that's helpful.
It is. Thank you very much.
Brian Solacey?
Not much. I mean, as long as you can balance a checkbook, I think you're a great candidate.
Well, you have to ask my wife that. Sometimes it doesn't work out too well.
But I think that the references you bring, I think people have spoken about you. It works for me.
By the way, all of this was disclosed on the application too. I'm sure you folks have gotten that, so you can refer back there as well.
Thank you. Ann Harrison?
How is your work with your church different from your professional work?
Very little, actually. We work with a variety of committees there. I was a member of the Finance Committee for a long time. I'm involved in the Endowment Committee. There's all of the interactions we have with fundraising and various other committees within the church. So I don't think it's terribly different, to be honest. But again, I'm comparing that to no experience on the governmental side, small town politics side. So once I get into it, I would venture to guess it's probably very similar.
I was looking to see if the church had competing demands for funds, which is...
Oh, yes, of course. Community outreach services, there's all kinds of other things. We need cash, operational cash, capital budgets. More things that are not coming to my mind right now, but there are lots of needs within the church. As a matter of fact, by looking at what's going on in Manchester by the Sea, the similarity there is having more needs than funds exists, and that's right now we're going through quite a bit of a number crunch in terms of operational funds at the church. It's COVID related. You know, the church attendance is down, so plate collections and a variety of other things are down. So we've had to dip into our endowment in a way we haven't been able to or had to in the past. So again, I think the operations and the service probably very similar.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I guess my main question is time availability for this, especially coming into fiscal year '24 planning. Do you have enough time to be able to put into this?
Well, that's a good question, and I think the answer to that is I can only do my best. It has come up rather suddenly. It wasn't something that I had budgeted for in terms of time for, you know, my 2022 year. I do have a hard kind of Monday night thing which I pushed aside today. So Mondays are difficult in the evening. That will be freed up after the end of the year. Aside from that, my calendar should be pretty flexible, especially given we can do these things via Zoom. So I don't see much of a difficulty going forward as long as my Mondays are not, you know, taken up on a weekly basis going forward between now and the end of the year. I think that I should be able to find the time to do it.
And did you and Mark or you and Sarah Mellish talk about the time that would be needed?
We did. I went and met with Sarah at her home, and we talked about, you know, the meetings ramping up, you know, towards the end of the year because of the budgeting cycle that's going on right now, or beginning to go on right now. I did indicate to Sarah at that time that, you know, Mondays were a hard kind of no for me because of prior commitments. And then there's a couple of dates going forward too. One is a wedding in Florida next week for my nephew, and, you know, things like that that are in my calendar going through the end of the year. But again, I think that other than Mondays and those handful of other dates like the wedding, I should be able to fit the meetings in. And I even again there as an example, being in Florida for the wedding, it's not going to be a Friday night wedding or a Monday night wedding, so I'm sure that I'd be able to do that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being willing to step up. Are there any other questions from the board? Ready to make a motion?
I move to approve the nomination of Thomas Parkins to the Finance Committee.
Second.
Term to end June 2023.
Okay, moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by John Round. Roll call vote, please. Ann Harrison,
Yes.
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
John Round.
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes. It's unanimous. Thank you very much, Tom, and best to Linda.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for your time, folks.
We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Okay. Next up, we have an appointment to Harbor Advisory Committee. And John Round, would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to nominate Skip Crocker.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. John Round, moved by John Round, seconded by Kathy Bellata. Roll call vote. John Round,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Ryan Solacey,
No.
Ann Harrison.
No.
Becky Jake says yes. 3-2. Skip, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think that next up will be, you'll be hearing from Carl Doan. Welcome to Harbor Advisory Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Michael Coyne for Parks and Rec, representative to CPC. This will be to fill Sean Daly's remaining term through June of 2023. Any questions on this? Okay, motion to approve the appointment of Michael Coyne as the Park and Rec Committee representative to CPC through June of 2023.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Ann Harrison,
Yes.
Ryan Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata, John Round,
Yes.
and Becky Jake says yes. Thank you, Michael Coyne. All right, next up, well, we have to wait for that agenda item. So, moving ahead to consent agenda, I would like to pull out Boo Bird, the approval of the entertainment. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to pull out of consent agenda?
I'd like to pull the minutes out for a couple of small changes.
Okay, anything else? May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda to include approval of the Christmas lights and accept resignation of Sean Daly?
I'm sorry, I have a question on Christmas lights.
Okay, we're gonna go back. All right.
My
Let's,
question is pretty simple.
okay.
They're already up.
Thank you. What happened?
Well, these,
Are these temporary Christmas lights?
well, this is,
I think I can speak to this.
yeah, this was,
Okay. I was approached back in late summer about the Christmas tree lights. In the past, the Chamber of Commerce has taken care of that. They paid for it, and then a bunch of volunteers, myself included, would hang the Christmas lights.
yep,
And then the business in town approached me, asked me, and I said I would run. I ran it by Erica Brown, who was the chapter chair for the Cape Ann Chamber, as well as a couple other volunteers. The chamber didn't have a problem with it, so we went ahead, and he went ahead and scheduled it. Told him about it last week, and that's when it occurred to me, geez, we ought to talk to Greg about this. That's when it made it to the consent agenda. I was surprised, as was he, that they hung them. He was surprised that the lights went on. That was just an oversight.
so,
And they'll come down. They're temporary. They're just going to be just like, they'll come down at the end of the beginning of the year, I guess.
well, it says here from the 23rd of November, so it's a little premature.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Until the 6th of January. And who is the AGEM?
He's a local business in town. He's the gentleman that has lit up the rest of the town. Okay, he owns 7 buildings, 7 Central, 11 Central, a couple of buildings, Harbor's Point. And he just was looking to try to create some consistency and probably, in my opinion, make it look like a little Courier Knives postcard.
Well, I will say I'm a little taken aback that it's kind of a little bit of a cart before the horse, and that this was
Well, that's
done
right,
prior to the board even hearing about it.
Just a question, how were they done in the past? Again,
Oh, we strung them.
no, I mean, the process was there an open bid process? I mean,
We're done for free, but the town, of
For
course,
free,
pays the
what-
power, but.
right, so I just wasn't sure what the process was. I mean, as a resident, I see the town lit up, it looks beautiful, but not clear on what the
Mhm.
process was.
So in the past, the chamber has requested permission
Okay,
to do so.
okay, and then they took care of it. Okay.
So it's interesting to me, though, so it was just sort of a decision between 3 people to change it up?
I approached, when I was approached, okay, I went to the chamber. All right, because the chamber, we have been doing it for, I don't know, ever since Christmas by
Okay, I
the
thought you
Sea.
said you went to Erica.
No, well, Erica being the chapter,
Mhm.
the chamber chapter chair here, Mike Storella, who was a volunteer for the chamber as well, okay? And there were about 5 or 6 of us that, for over the course of the last 7 or 8 years, have hung the lights. Didn't think much beyond that. It was just one of those things that the gentleman wanted to do it, he wanted to beautify the town, that was a great addition. And then after the fact, and Greg can speak to this, last Monday, I guess it was, or I sent an email to Greg saying, just occurred to me, you probably need something, some kind of permission, because it is on town property. And that was an oversight on my part, but it was, so we went ahead, Mr. Flamia did it, okay, all at his expense, okay? And we'll take it down, all at his expense.
So if Mr. Flamio is putting up the lights, is there anything, I mean, is this out of the good, I mean, what is the motivation
The
there?
motivation is that she wants to give back to the community.
He, she?
He.
Okay, I thought you said she, sorry. No,
No, there is no, my opinion, other than the fact that he wants consistency with all the lights in town. So maybe there is, I'm guessing that's the motivating factor right there.
okay, I would just like to say that I think that we, and it's very nice of him to volunteer to do this and spending his time and money, but I do think we need to, make sure that
Well, in the future, now, I've already talked
T's
to
are
him about it.
crossed and I's are dotted.
I've already spoken to him about it, and he was apologetic.
Um,
He's out of town, so he didn't even realize what was happening.
Any other board comments? John Round?
No, none, I just, all of a sudden we were lit up.
I was shocked when I came to town, because
And it was
I'm the one that
November,
presented the
November
dates. I think I came into town Thursday night, and I think that's when they went on, and I was a little shocked by it. And the fact that I happened to be listening to Christmas tunes on the way in, I'm kind of appropriate though. I don't know, I'm just rushing the season.
Dual seasonality?
Well, I figured the sooner we get it done, the sooner we get into spring.
Yeah, it's just, it's,
I don't see how that goes, but I like that way of thinking. Okay, Kathy, any?
Just all the concerns that you expressed, I share. This is not the way to go about it. It's a wonderful gift. Thank the person who gave it to us, but I don't want to see a repeat next year. That's my comment.
Okay, there won't be.
Are they going to stay on from now until, is it officially Christmas?
I'll ask him to,
Because these dates
I
make a little more sense.
will touch base with him when we're done here. He's down in Brazil right now, so I talked to him at 4 o'clock this morning, which was not pleasant. I just woke up, but I'll ask that he turn the lights off. Also, there was something on social media about one of the light poles that wasn't lit, okay, down by Summer Street, and I believe he took care of that today.
I'm confused. Who has control over
Right.
when they're on and off? I thought we had a nice gift, but I didn't think somebody else had control over
Well, no,
turning them on.
he's got a, whatever reason they were turned on sooner than they were
But
supposed
who
to.
has, that's not my question.
Right.
Who has control over the switch?
Well, they're just plugged into the light poles.
Who turns them
Who
on?
turns them on
Who
and off?
turns them off? Where is the timer?
They're controlled by DPW.
Okay,
Okay.
that was my question.
Okay.
Okay, they stay off until we agree as a board when they should be turned on, correct?
Okay.
these are the street lights. Now, he's got several
the
buildings
poles.
that have
The
lights.
poles that have
And
And
he
this is
has
the first
control
time,
over that.
usually, in the past, if you recall, and I'm not here to defend him one way or the other, is that this is the soonest any of these buildings have ever been lit up. It's usually right around Christmas by the Sea when they get hit. So I don't know who jumped the gun here, I don't know if it was his subcontract or whatever, but I will touch base with him when we're done here.
And I'm sure these are LED lights, right?
I think they cost
just-
less than whatever the, as far as operating goes,
Well, yeah, it's
they're gonna be less
the,
than what the chamber was providing. Which-
and I personally don't have a problem with them being on now. It doesn't bother me, but does anybody else have a preference?
I don't have a strong opinion.
To be honest with you, since daylight savings time has ended,
Yep.
I find them a welcome addition to cheering us up now that it gets dark at like 4:30 or whatever.
Me too.
I
You can
have
ask
no
them if you
objection.
wanted to.
My only comment is, I do think we should be referring to them as holiday lights. There are
Yep.
a lot of holidays celebrated over the next 2 months, and
Yep.
that
I
would be my.
would agree with that. Greg or Debbie, is there typically a form that, or an email somebody sends to you regarding, okay, can we have, Mr. Flammio submit just a letter of
Sure.
his intent to put up the holiday lights, and just what we have here. So if he could formally submit that, that would be wonderful. Did we cover that one? Okey dokey. So may I have a motion to, under the consent agenda, approve holiday lights as well as accept the resignation of Sean Daly
So the holiday lights.
as the Parks and Rec Committee? Say again.
Holiday, what's the time frame we're approving for?
The holiday lights will be up from, wait, went away. From now until January 6th, from 4 in the afternoon to, I have to bring that up again,
10 at night.
10 at night. Okay. And is everybody good with that? Okay, motion to approve those 2 items, please.
So moved.
Second? Okay, moved by Kathy Bellata, seconded by Brian Solacey. Roll call vote. John Round,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
Ann Harrison.
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes. That's unanimous. Okay, we have 1 more minute. Ann, what did you want to talk about regarding the minutes?
Okay. 2 small things. One, one, two, three, 4th page, talking about the floats. The paragraph that starts, Ms. Harrison asked if the town did not put in the floats. I may have said that, but I didn't. The town is not going to put in floats at either of the marinas. And so.
Okay.
If the floats were not put in. And the other one is on the second to last page. Mr. Round asked how much water we're losing in Flushing. Mr. Federspiel answered, we are required to estimate the gallons, and it is a fraction of what, I think it's a fraction. Yes.
I also had a couple of changes to the minutes,
Mhm.
small ones, or maybe it's my confusion. I thought that, Becky, you were going to be the liaison to the Harbor Advisory Committee.
That was, at this meeting, Brian was, then
Okay.
we amended
Then
that.
Then you amended,
So,
okay.
Yeah,
okay.
so that is
was
correct at that point.
All right.
Shortest term ever.
Yeah.
And then, I apologize, but there was somewhere a mention of the fees that the town would collect would be waterway fees and slip fees, I guess excise taxes that the town benefits from, not slip fees.
Okay.
So I just think that one item needs to be corrected, and I'm good with it.
Thank you. Okay, and I sent mine in. So,
Move to approve the minutes of the October 17th meeting of the select board as amended.
Second.
moved by Ann Harrison, seconded Kathy Bellata. Roll call vote. Ann Harrison,
Yes.
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
John Round.
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes, and we are ready to move on to amendment to the North Shore Regional Compost Facility. All right, pretty straightforward. Any questions, John Round?
Nope.
Kathy Bellata? Brian Solacey?
Nothing.
Ann Harrison?
Nope.
My only question was, and just to confirm, town council's all square on this, correct?
Yeah, he corrected the amended language and then the vendor agreed to it.
Okay. May I have a roll call vote, a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by John Round. Roll call vote. John Round?
Yes?
Kathy Bellata?
Yes.
Brian Solacey?
Yes.
Ann Harrison?
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes. That's unanimous. Okay, so, let's see, we can go back to the consent agenda now. And this is on the application of entertainment for Boo Bird.
So I did tell them that would be likely later tonight,
Okay,
about quarter of.
okay, so we will,
But depending on what questions you might have.
okay. Can we go on then to the town administrator's report?
That's fine. Yeah, just a few items to go over. One, as you know, both marinas in town have applications before the planning board. They asked if you had comments that you wanted to make. Their meeting is Wednesday night. Kathy submitted some comments that she had. And so if others still want to do that, I'll collect them and send them along for Wednesday night's meeting. Otherwise, I'll pass along Kathy's notes, and that's fine. I just want to
Right,
update on that. So again, just to be clear, so two separate processes. There's the planning board site plan review process, which focuses on the various site plan review criteria. Our bylaw says that any project that requires a Chapter 91 license also has to get a site plan review approval through the planning board. So the marinas are seeking that approval first, and then they will submit their formal Chapter 91 license applications, and then that triggers another round of public comment that's possible. And they have different criteria than the planning board is using. So I'm just clarifying that is the process.
will we be able to hear, I'd love to hear how the boat ride went.
Yeah.
And if any members of the public opted to attend as well,
I wasn't there.
because it was open to them, I know that.
Yeah, it was open.
I don't think there was any members from the public.
I
think it
don't
was
believe
just
there was.
planning
A couple
board.
asked about it, and
Yeah.
then they said they were gonna go, but I don't think they ended up showing up.
Yep.
So, yeah, the planning board was able to view from the water. They were able to get on the harbor master boats and see the layout, imagine the layout
Yep,
from
yep.
the water. And I think they found that instructive.
I would imagine so. I hope to do that, but couldn't.
I've got a question about the Chapter 91. Is that just a decision, yes, no, or whatever, or is this like a written decision, this is what we think?
Well, it'll be a written decision. They'll have findings.
And we will get to see that.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, they'll issue a findings and then a final decision as part of the license.
Could we get, I mean, if we're being asked to comment or weigh in, do we have access on the SharePoint to that information that they'll be sharing? I know it's limited access on SharePoint. I was trying to access something today and couldn't.
So we can certainly provide that.
No,
That's
I
something
think it would be helpful to me, certainly. Debbie, you're furrowing your brow. Am I being confusing? Okay. It can happen, doesn't it? All right.
So secondly, School Street, wrapping up, we got all the bypass pipe out of the road. They're working this week to do the cleanup, basically, remove the temporary
Aprons.
aprons, yeah, thank you, the driveway aprons that were getting people up and over the pipe, temporary pipe, and patching the road. It will not get a new pave over until next spring. So it'll be a little rough during the winter, but it'll certainly be better than it has been over the last few months. So I'm sure people are anxious for it to finally be back more to normal,
Mm-hmm.
and we're a few days away from that. So hopefully by the end of this week, it'll feel pretty much cleaned up.
Excellent.
Um,
Quite a picture on those pipes before and after.
Yes.
Holy smokes.
Yes,
Wow.
it's quite a difference.
Mhm.
That's why we need to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have a lot of pipe that's in that condition.
Yeah.
So we'll keep chipping away at sections of town to do that. The design work on Tex Point for the rotunda is getting underway. The engineers will develop 3 different options. One is raising it up in its current location, and then a raise of the pier going out to it. Second alternative is to raise it up and have it a little further out than where it is, enabling it just to be moved once rather than moved twice. And then a third option would be a land-based option. Looking most likely at that sort of granite knoll that's, as you're looking at the rotunda, just to your left. That little picnic knoll area.
Kind of where the old launching area is, right? Near the old launch area?
Well, it's between the launch area and
in the pier.
And the rotunda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will that preclude kids jumping off it anymore?
It would.
That might be,
Brian, I think
It
that
would.
would be a wise thing.
This is,
it's a rite of passage, though.
Yes.
who's managing that process? Is that DPW or,
So DPW is managing it.
that's what I mean,
We've
yeah,
hired
they've got somebody,
Bath engineers. They did the engineering work for the new floats at Tux. They've done our engineering on the dredging,
same guys,
same firm.
okay.
So once they develop some preliminary plans on those 3 options, we'll bring them before you and hold a public forum or two to gain some public input on which of those 3 options are most desired.
Okay.
And cost comparisons. So that's underway.
Cost comparisons, life expectancies, or
Yes.
projections.
Yes.
we're not considering putting it on top of the septic mound.
No, we are not. We did not ask them to look at
Can't
that
do
option.
that.
And the last report item here is pleased to say that we have brought on board an interim planner for 20 to 23 hours a week. Betsy Ware is her name. Some people may recognize that name. She grew up in town and has been a professional planner in a number of communities in the state. Retired recently. Is willing to help us out on an interim basis. And so I think that'll help us keep things moving. So I was pleased that we were able to find someone so quickly. And she started today. And we'll be working mostly Mondays and Thursdays in town hall and then remotely 1 day a week. So
Has
those
she
are the,
met the planning board? Has she met any of the members of the planning board yet?
she will Wednesday, so she'll attend the meeting
Excellent.
Wednesday night, yeah. But I did send her resume and an announcement to them as well.
Excellent.
So,
Awesome.
you have that. So those are the things I wanted to go over.
Thank you. Okay, brings us to 7:20 and the policy on political signs on public property. Okay. Thank you to John and Ann. And before I go on, I need to back up once more. And regarding the Harbor Advisory Committee, and I wanted to also thank very much Sean Zahn and Jim Starkey for offering to help, and hopefully they will not be shy of stepping up or possibly getting involved with the harbor master plan when that comes forward. So thank you very much to Jim and Sean. Okay. Debbie, you're gonna have a lot of fun with these minutes, aren't you? Okay, so now we're on the policy and John and Ann.
I think when we discussed the, policy last time, we agreed that the "and destroyed" was inappropriate. That the policy, the tendency, what had happened in the past is that signs were collected and put someplace where they could be, so I took that up without even talking to John.
That's right.
Did you go rogue, Ann?
I went rogue, yeah.
Whoa.
Poetic license is
And-
accepted,
and
that's
Kathy
fine.
had asked, had said that it wasn't universally known which pieces of property were owned by the town.
Mm-hmm.
And I added a list of the ones that came to my mind, and in particular, the town property, the property near Shingle Place Hill is town-owned, but managed by the Conservation Trust, so I included that.
Yeah, and there are a number of places where I've seen signs before, such as where benches are. Some of those are private, some of that is town land, medians, things like that. Do we need to include some specifics, or is it clear enough with town land, town property?
So just a question along that line. So is there a place on the website where we list town property or town lands and we could just have the policy refer to that list, or do we not have something that the public? I think this is a wonderful addition. I'm just not sure people will know which lands are owned by the town and managed by MECT.
Yeah, I don't think we have, well, we do have a listing as part of the open space plan that has a list
Right.
of all town lands, but people wouldn't know necessarily to go there.
Yeah, I don't think they would.
So we could certainly put it,
So if there
But
is an
that's a list.
existing link online, we could add that as a link from this policy to theirs, and here's a list of the properties where signs are not allowed or something.
Yep.
That'd be okay.
Because I know that if you go to the maps, the town property,
You can find out the
Geo.
property owner of every
Right.
piece, but it's a little tedious.
it is very tedious. So that's where I think that, if someone were to want to know about a specific piece, they could go on the map. But it would be a lot clearer if there was a direct link.
Also, I think the town clerk should have a list. Only because I know I asked, okay, right up front. So, I mean, that would be that's where I went to look when I asked, was I went to Diane's office.
Interesting. Is that
that's fine,
okay?
yeah, that's easy.
And the only reason I'm going, is because I know that the town clerk has a lot of hats. And I'm always just a little reluctant to give one more. However, but if there are other,
It seems
Would
like,
that be in the
it seems you pull your papers from the town clerk.
Exactly.
Well,
Because that's
either
gonna be the
there-
single source, where
Yeah, that's a
everything-
great point.
Yeah.
or if you go to the assessors, I mean, they've got the maps there, would that be a logical place to get that?
I'm just saying, I mean, it just seemed logical to me, if I'm pulling papers from her, she's the one source I'm gonna go to anything election.
So I agree with that. That's a great point. This policy also covers, it's not just for elected officials, it's for policy positions. So in that instance, a person might not be pulling papers, but still need to.
All these SLB signs at some
Yeah,
point
exactly,
would have to be
exactly, yeah.
Greg, do we have a map with that lays out where the publicly owned properties are?
We do, yes.
I mean, that's better than having a list. People don't identify. If you have a map, you know where you are in town, and you can easily look and see what the story is.
So
We
how
should
about-
have that graphic, and that would solve the problems in
Sure.
seconds. Somebody would say, I know what's going on.
Can we have a statement policy that's attached to when you pull the papers?
Say it again.
When you pull your papers, your nomination papers, you sign up, when Diane or the clerk gives you this, then she also hands you this. This is the town policy.
Yeah.
That way there's no, I didn't think to ask.
That's a good idea.
Sounds to me that we are not prepared to approve this policy yet.
This is second reading, right?
This is second reading
It's a
and
second reading.
we don't have, we're referencing a list
Right,
that we don't have.
right.
And
Well, that list will change. So
Yeah, yeah. So with that, is it that this policy is handed out when someone pulls papers? So we need to incorporate that into the policy, right? To be handed out when someone is,
Do we need-
That doesn't,
No, I don't
No?
think so.
that's sort of an implementation.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I wasn't suggesting we needed to really change any wording. You know, there's line,
Yep.
it's underlined here, just a
just
live
making it
link
easier.
or something to, but that wouldn't help if someone got a paper copy of the policy, so.
Are we then comfortable with this policy as it's written for the second reading? Anybody want any changes to it?
Maybe there should be a comment, just say a listing or of the public, you know, the public lands may be found X.
well, we don't have an X. We have an X that's in the open space plan somewhere.
Well, we
Well-
have a map. We can produce a map.
Okay, where do you find?
Yeah, where does somebody go for that?
Well, so we'll create a map and put it on the website with the policy.
Is the policy going on the website?
I would put this one on in particular just because of the,
Okay,
Yeah, it could be under the town clerk and the
Yeah,
election
exactly.
section.
good part
There's
of the
the
election
policy for
section.
that, yeah.
So to create a hornet's nest, because that's what I do. So an example being, we talk about SLB, Black Lives Matter, all these signs that are out there are no longer allowed on town property. Is that correct?
that was my intention in setting this
Yeah.
up.
Okay. And as long as we're consistent across the board, then no one can.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, which is what
This
this
is-
is about.
So is it enough to say, or are we gonna stay silent and just say, a listing of town properties may be found on the town website, which is pretty generic?
I don't think we need to state that in here. I think that we say town property. So if somebody wants to find out town property,
Right, I think the policy is perfectly fine
Right.
as is, and I think we could approve it. When we publish this policy on the town website, we can add on to the town website, oh,
Right.
by the way, and here's where you find a list of town properties. That's what would allow us to approve this tonight, move forward, and still
Okay,
get the job
I
done.
agree.
Everyone's up.
May I have a motion to approve?
hang on.
Oh,
I
wait.
want to make sure I understand what you're approving.
Almost
Uh,
there.
I made
Your change.
two changes. One
Right.
was and destroyed going away.
Yeah.
And
Which I think
the other
is good.
was including, and do we just want to stop at owned by the town of Manchester, period? Or do we want to list examples?
I think we end at the town of property owned by the town of Manchester.
And when it goes on the website,
Then we have the link.
the website has the link. Okay,
Right.
fine.
What does everybody
Right,
else?
so that clarifying statement is not gonna be on it?
Correct.
Clarifying statement. Well, I am suggesting that the clarifying statement may not be necessary.
John, what do you think? John's got his
I
lips
think, I
pursed.
think it provides the reader, not only us, but others, information that they may not necessarily have thought about. especially the land that the town owns but is managed by the MECT.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lot of people think very much about that. And I can see that parking area down there
Yeah,
with signs. And I don't think, I'm saying perhaps out of ignorance or anything else people said, I didn't think that was,
Well, I don't have a problem with that staying in.
I'm perfectly fine with just the way Ann has
Yeah,
it right here,
I-
I think it's great.
I like it.
Okay,
Make a motion.
okay, I move to approve the second reading of the policy on political signs on public property, including the list of properties and not including the destroyed.
Wow, you got that?
Second,
okay, moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by Kathy Bellata. Roll call vote. Ann Harrison,
Yes,
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
yes.
John Round,
Yes, so it's as written, yes.
That's
Becky Jake says yes. It's unanimous. Thank you to our policy people. All right, next up we have the water ban discussion. And it's been reduced from level 3 to level 2 in our area.
what is,
John, say again,
what
and
is the state policy on level 2?
I need to refresh myself.
So level 2, they still recommend hand watering only. Conserve and hand watering.
Just read it off tonight.
Just where we are.
Mhm.
What is
Yeah.
the level of the reservoir at this point, that we've been watching?
Is Chuck on?
Yeah, no, Chuck isn't on. Yeah, I haven't checked in the last week.
You know, that's a difficult thing to use because not only is that a function of the groundwater that is feeding into Gravelly Pond, it's also a function of what the DPW decides to pump into there from Round Pond. So that level is controlled by the DPW, and they have kind of ranges that they want to be in. And some days they're pumping a lot of water, and some days, in general, it's a similar amount every day, but it's not always. So they're regulating that.
They're comfortable with where the level is.
Yes, they are.
I feel that we need to, if we're comfortable where the water level is, I think we need to let our residents do that end of year cleaning on their property. Just like we discussed with the boats, it's once a year, you gotta flush your engine and before you put it in storage, and there's some, cleanup that people would like to do that's before the winter, and those fences, I don't know, it's just a thought, if, depending on the water levels, that's why.
I mean, it's my understanding, those are just suggestions from the state, it's not a mandate from the state, correct?
Correct.
So we're unique, we have a lot of people that are taking their boats out of the water, I would think. And if someone wants to stand there in the middle of November and water the lawn, God bless them.
A lot of those people have irrigation systems, and to be honest, the majority have already been shut off.
Yeah, I think
Right,
they're-
yeah, you gotta
So if they're using water
Yeah.
outside, it's their house water, which is a lot more expensive.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, they're
So-
looking at first frost and first freeze too.
Yes, that's correct. They try to do all of it by the end of October. So I think we're good.
I agree.
Ken?
I think we put in the conservation restrictions because of the state drought. And I'm having trouble finding a logical understanding of why we put it in. Beverly didn't put in anything. And what are the grounds that are different now? Aside from the fact that people probably aren't going to be using irrigation systems. So are we only going to have water protection? I guess we only have it in the summer anyway, so we had a reason for doing it, the reason still exists. And yet we think we ought to not do it anymore. And
Sean,
Well, the consumption during the summer is several times higher than it is during the regular year.
And that's irrigation.
And it's all irrigation. It's like 3 times higher in our town, which is much higher than any of the other towns around us.
Irrigation, filling pools, things
Yeah.
like
So
that.
people are back to their core consumption. You hope that everybody is more or less conscious and trying to be as efficient as possible. And I think that most people are sensitive to the fact that you should conserve water because they're not making much more of it.
There's an awful lot around,
There is.
Yeah.
all
Well,
around us,
We have a difficult perspective relative to Kansas or something. It's just,
or California.
or yes.
the town is what, 47% and change is water,
I mean, to your point, Ann, you know, the water shortage here was never as difficult as it was in a lot of other
Mhm.
places in the state. And the state, you know, moved to these restrictions, and I think we kind of moved there because the crowd was kind of moving in that direction. But if push came to shove, we were still going to be in a better position than most of the other communities around us. Because our water basin, the coastal water basin, we're very fortunate. It has a goodly amount of water as opposed to the Ipswich Basin,
Yeah, which is a disaster, yeah.
which is a real problem for all of the towns north of us.
Mhm.
So, but still to the point, I think that we're fine with our water as it stands, and we should remove the ban. If you don't, people are gonna start to think you're kind of crying wolf here a little bit. And
Yeah.
keeping things going when what's going on. I think you really need to have bans when it really makes sense that you've got shortages and you should have them.
I am in agreement with Ann on this. I think that what's apparent to some is not necessarily apparent to others. And I think this is a situation that's going to be getting worse. Yes, Ann?
One of the questions was, what is the state of
Mhm.
Gravelly Pond? Could we put this off to the next meeting, and so we can hear from Chuck that in fact everything is fine?
So Chuck's on. I don't know if you guys can hear me. This
Hey,
is
Chuck.
There it is.
Sorry, I didn't see the back signal in time. This is Chuck here at DPW. So I can answer any of the questions. Sorry, I just got in, so I didn't hear everything. But in general, and I think I've said this before, but we unique situation because we have a registration that currently does not have any sort of water restrictions implemented. So on any given year, we, and you guys as the water commissioners, dictate when we implement these restrictions. The thing that's changed in the last couple of years and, since other years is that the state has come up with a state drought plan. And that drought plan was kicked into effect and was actually, made in 2020. So it's very new. But essentially what you're seeing and why I think there is confusion and, to be honest, if I wasn't in my position, I probably wouldn't pay attention either. But the reason I think that we implemented the restrictions earlier in the summer is because the entire state and certainly our region was in a drought. And the state drought plan calls for you to, ban non-essential outdoor use. We did not have to do that, but we did it, and I think it was prudent at the time to show that we are, good stewards of our environment, and we are trying to ensure that we have water, in times of drought. Now that being said, we also have the power to lift those restrictions that we self-imposed when we deem, that's the right thing to do. I would go a little bit further and just say that it will not always be like this. I think Greg last week, and I don't know if you got a chance to read it, but the state is, DEP, who holds our registration, is trying to implement, because we have to renew our registration every 10 years, is trying to implement that basically these water restrictions kick in when the state says they do. And that would have been, what you saw this summer. And so that technically we would be in a situation if those restrictions were implemented right now to not be able to lift them until the state said that we could. Now, I will say the state drought plan, while well-intentioned, aren't looking at the micro watershed level, meaning our water supplies. They are looking at the greater basin, and the greater basin is even beyond our sub-basin, which is the North Coastal, like John mentioned, but also includes basically our region, which is Northeast region, which includes the Ipswich, which has no water. And so that's why there's gonna be a lot of confusion, if DEP does implement these types of kind of broad restrictions. We're not gonna be able to really tell our customers or citizens anything except the state said so, and so we have to do it. But that's not the situation we're in right now, and so that's why, I'm comfortable certainly lifting the water restrictions. I did talk to Ben today, who's our lead operator, and our daily demand running 7-day average is less than 400,000 gallons a day. To put that in perspective, a typical summer day, we're well over 1 million. So we're, roughly at a third of our typical consumption, and that is, dead on with the fact that, it's the middle of November, getting late November, or I should say, we're now past November, and we have, nobody's turning on their irrigation system, even if they wanted to. They probably wouldn't because they'd have to drain it again. So, there's no reason to believe that if you lift this ban, that our non-essential use is gonna skyrocket to the, levels of, a summer day. That's just not gonna happen. So, I'm fairly comfortable. I think people have been reasonable. I haven't been getting a ton of calls in my office. So I would be, willing to bet that we don't see any sort of issues. So I'll leave it there unless there's any other questions. But.
Chuck, I do have a question for you, and I apologize if I missed this if you said it. So what the use we're seeing now, is that typical for this time of year, more or less?
Yeah, for sure.
It is typical.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board for Chuck? Ann? Brian?
No.
Kathy? John?
No.
Okay, thank you, Chuck.
In that
No, no
case,
problem.
I move to remove the current water ban.
Okay, moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by Kathy Bellata. Roll call vote, Ann Harrison,
Yes.
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
John Round.
Yes.
Becky Jake says no, so 4-1, the water ban is lifted. Can we please, as you suggested, Greg, still ask people to be conservative in their use? Okay, thank you. So next up, special town meeting. Hi, Alan.
Hi, Becky. Hi, everybody.
Okay. Greg?
So, as you know, we have our special town meeting scheduled for next Monday and likely Tuesday. It's likely to span two evenings, obviously depending on how quickly we get through the various articles. Hard to always predict exactly. So I think it's worth your while just basically running through the articles just to refresh you and public what articles we have on tap. You've already taken your position, just sort of refresh who's taking what article in terms of comments, so that we are all on the same page. The Board of Health has issued protocols for the town meeting that we will be following, and that means masks will be required in the auditorium section. For people who want to sit in the main meeting room, we will have full audio-visual connection with the cafeteria, which will be a space where people can go if they prefer not to wear a mask. And so people will be spaced out and spaced apart in the cafeteria if they don't want to wear a mask. I think we've had good compliance in the past with mask wearing at town meeting. We don't expect there to be issues. I think the majority of people will want to be in the auditorium and will put on a mask. So, like I said,
Has that information been put out so people know that they'll have to wear masks?
So it is posted on the website and as part of the town meeting page. But certainly we can emphasize that between now and
I would
next.
recommend that.
It will be,
because
it will be,
a lot of us
I've sent a letter to the Cricket, it'll be in this week's Cricket as well.
Thank you, Alan.
I was just gonna say, I think it's important we emphasize it as much as possible, because a lot of us, I forget to have one in my purse sometimes, and if I have a doctor's appointment, I gotta, they provide one to
Yep,
me.
yep.
and-
We will also have some available
Okay,
as
that's,
people check in.
yeah.
We have produced, thanks to Debbie's good work,
Yes.
a nice booklet for the town meeting. These are available now. Encourage people to pick them up. They're available here at Town Hall, in the police lobby, at the library. They'll be available tomorrow all day at the Memorial School as people vote. So people can pick them up after voting as well. And of course, we'll have them at the town meeting. But we certainly encourage people to pick them up ahead of time and review the different articles and the details. So the full warrant is in here, and then the actual proposed language for each of the zoning articles are in here as well. And those all have a line number, so people can refer to a specific line number during the debate if that's needed. So hopefully that'll help move things along. Think of other overview points.
Has Diane, have there been many people coming in to either of any of the locations to pick them up yet?
Yeah, we've gone out, a box full
Good.
of boxes,
Good.
probably 100+ copies.
Wonderful, okay.
So yes, people are picking them up. And, hopefully that'll continue over the next few days as well. I would expect to give out a lot tomorrow at voting. So I think that'll be our biggest distribution.
Thank you.
So like I say, I think it's worth your while just to, not to belabor it, but to run through the articles and see if there are any questions or any informational needs that you feel are helpful.
Becky, excuse me, before we do that, I am, having spent, as you would guess, a lot of time with the warrant and with the planning board voters booklet, I'm convinced that we're gonna need 2 nights for this meeting. And I wanna inform the voters ahead of time that that's likely the case, so that they know what to expect. And to help me do that, I would like to ask the board to vote formally to recommend to the meeting that if a second night is required, we reconvene on Tuesday, the 15th at 6:30. And I'll put that out on the website and in the Cricket if you agree.
And I think we are going to be doing another reverse 911, is that correct? And we could include the information on that as well. Alan?
I think that would be great.
And will we be able to have that done by a human as opposed to the
Yes.
computerized?
Yes. Yeah, I much prefer the human voice rather than the computerized voice.
Okay, and so that'll be, you'll give the exact information or wording you'd like, Alan, for that?
For the reverse 911?
Just for both the masks as well as the strong feeling that we will go to a second night and that it will be Tuesday the 15th, starting at 6:30?
I think that's what we should do.
Right.
The earlier start, I think on the second night is also desirable. I have already got the public health protocol posted on the website, and I think it's also on social media, and it will be in the Cricket on Friday.
Okay, and it would be good to go ahead and include that in the reverse 911 call. Okay, thank you.
Debbie, how much time do you need to rehearse this?
Oh, Todd. Okay.
So I think it'd be appropriate to have that motion about the second night.
And what specifically would the language be for that motion?
It would be that the Board of Selectmen recommends to the meeting that if a second night is required, we reconvene on Tuesday, the 15th at 6:30 PM in the high school.
With the same health protocols?
Yes.
Okay,
So moved.
okay.
Second.
Moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by Brian Solacey. Roll call vote. Ann Harrison,
Yes.
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata, John Round,
Yes?
Becky Jake says yes. That's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so you wanted to go over who's speaking.
I hope the voting at town meeting goes so smoothly. I'll try to emulate your example, Becky.
One can only hope. Okay. Did you want to, who's speaking to which? Did you want to go over those again? Is that what?
I was just gonna run through the articles
Yep.
and just sort of refresh people's memories and go from there. I mean, obviously, the bulk of the articles are planning board articles.
Mhm.
So Article 1 is the seeking appropriation, $130,000 from our undesignated fund balance to help pay for legal and professional services related to the 40B project.
And that's John Round will speak to that.
Yes.
My notes from our last conversation about this indicate that Becky was going to move and John Round was going to speak.
Correct.
I think in general, it makes sense for the speaker to be the mover.
Okay, and then why don't we have John Round move that? And
Alan, and your comments guidelines are what?
2 minutes,
Fine?
unless you need more time
No?
in advance.
and we had Ann Harrison as seconding that. We'll go ahead and keep that the same.
That's fine.
Okay. So, Article 2.
Yeah, Article 2 is a motion to appropriate the sum of $450,000 from the town's existing fire and apparatus fund for either an ambulance rebuild, ambulance 1, or ambulance 2, I'm sorry, the older ambulance rebuild, or to purchase a new ambulance. And again, this is a petition that you have, an article that you have put forward. The question of whether or not to pursue a rebuild or to buy a new is one that can be made after
Right.
voters approve this article. It's something that you and the finance committee and the fire chief would have the authority then to finalize which direction to take.
So it's not a decision that has to be made at this moment.
I have a question for Alan. Would you
Yes.
allow discussion on the two alternatives? Or would this simply be, approve this expenditure and the decision about how it will be spent or how much of it will be spent will be made subsequently by the Board of Selectmen?
That's a very good question.
Discussion.
I had assumed that there would be some discussion of the alternatives, but it may be that it's not necessary. I'd like to think about that some more, but it's a good question, Ann. Thank you. Since the motion would allow both,
Either.
I'm not sure that there's a reason for the meeting to discuss the merits of one alternative versus the other.
Or another way of putting that is, would we have all of the relevant data to have the right discussion? I think we are not gonna have all of the relevant data at the time.
Sarah is speaking to this, right?
We have that Ann Harrison is speaking, the chief will speak, and Sarah Melish will speak. So Ann is from speaking from the board because she's moving it and I'm seconding it.
Well, those speakers, that will engender a lot of discussion,
They have 2 minutes each.
okay?
Well, I need to think about whether we're going to allow, whether I'm going to allow discussion of the merits of rebuild versus new purchase. Since the vote as proposed would authorize both, I'm not sure that there's a reason to have a discussion of the merits of alternatives. The meeting is not going to decide unless the motion is changed between the two alternatives. But let me think about that and maybe confer with town council.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so then Article 3,
I will get back to you.
Thank you, Alan.
so Article 3 then is the citizen petition article seeking a new general bylaw and something that would have to be approved by the general legislature as a special act to allow for a recall provision of elected officials. So I believe, Becky, yours?
I'm going to speak on that, to that.
And I understand that there was a 4-1 vote on that, and I think you were the no vote. Did you want to speak on that as well?
I was actually the yes vote.
It was the board voted
Yes.
4,
Yes.
4 were no, 1 yes, Ann was the yes.
To recommend approval.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, and my question is, Ann, did you want to speak on that?
Yes.
Okay.
So would she be speaking from the perspective,
I would be speaking as myself, because I do not speak for the board in this.
Right.
then would that be at a different time and not standing at the beginning as a member of the select board?
Well, this is kind of an unusual meeting because, as I think you know, we have on the planning board minority members who differ from the majority on several of the planning board's proposed zoning amendments. And so the way I'm going to organize that aspect of it is I'm going to allow, after the spokesperson for the majority of the planning board members speaks, I'm going to allow one of the 2 minority members to speak, and I will give them equal time, and no more than equal time.
Yep.
And I think I should follow the same procedure with respect to this article and the majority and minority of the select board.
Sounds fair? Thank you, Alan. Okay, so I will speak and then Ann will speak.
Yes.
Okay.
So then we move into the proposals, amendments, Articles 4 through 16. Did you want to go through each of those as well?
And I was going to speak in the beginning, in general, to that, okay? None of us will be speaking on those, right?
Wait, my understanding was you were going to make an opening statement under the motion on Article 4 with respect to your recommendations in general, and then no one on behalf of the selectmen would be speaking on the individual articles thereafter.
Correct, that's what I had as well. Do we want,
That doesn't preclude any of you from making a comment or responding to someone else's comment.
right,
Just a question procedurally. So in the past, I've seen select board members speak from their perch up on high, and I think at the last town meeting, one of the articles, and I think you came down from the stage and went to a microphone. I'm wondering, what's the protocol if one of us wanted to comment on something as as a resident, is that what the protocol is, that you come down off the floor to a regular microphone, or?
Alan?
Well, what I'm anticipating, what I've told the DPW staff for arranging the physical setup of the meeting is that we'll have, as usual, the town administrator, the select board, and probably town clerk will be to my right. And the planning board will, along with the Turning Technology electronic voting person, will be to my left. There will be a second podium at the left end of the stage where it will be easily accessible to the planning board members, because they'll be doing most of the presenting there. So probably it'll be a little awkward for select board members to maneuver from the table at my right to the podium at the far end of the stage on the left. I would suggest that the select board members all speak from the table.
Even if they are speaking as a member of the public and not representing or speaking as a board member?
Well, as I said, this is a little bit unusual because we're going to have minority members of two town boards speaking. And so I would anticipate that the planning board minority would do their speaking from the planning board table or the podium at the far end, and that the select board members, including the minority, would speak from their seats at the table.
Is that
I just find it, I mean, I'm asking as a newbie, right, first time meeting.
right?
And it just, if I have something to say, which I don't anticipate speaking at
Right.
all, but, you know, if I'm speaking just as myself as a resident, I think I belong with the residents. And I would expect to have an easy
Yes.
exit, so I could come off this stage and go to a microphone like Ann did at the last meeting.
And that's typical. That's what to remove any confusion.
Exactly,
That's what
yes,
I've
yes.
seen in the past.
Is there any reason why we can't accommodate an easy path for a select board member to come off the stage if one of us feels the need to speak as a resident and not advocating for the board position?
Well, if one is speaking as a resident and not as a minority member of the select board, you could go off the stage, in front of the stage, and use one of the roving mics.
Okay, but even, I guess I'm questioning, even as a minority member of, I mean, Brian and I voted differently on, I think, one of the articles.
Mhm.
I don't plan to speak on that, but if one of us did want to speak, why, I would not feel comfortable speaking from the stage because I at that point would not be representing the board's position. I think
Right.
it's confusing. So I guess I'm questioning a little bit the thought of minority board members speaking from the stage in any capacity, because the board position is the board position, and if any of us disagree, we're speaking as residents.
Right.
I don't understand this concept of a minority board position. To me, that dilutes the strength of the board.
Well,
Well,
I'm making this decision based on what I think is fair. And I think there is a difference between individual residents speaking on their own behalf, with their own opinions, and minority board members on an elected board. I think in fairness and I come at this from the perspective of the differences between the planning board members, but I think in fairness to both sides of that debate, I need to accord them similar treatment.
Okay. So if on the one article where Brian and I voted differently, if we choose to speak on that, then we should stay on the stage as minority board members for those articles?
Yes.
And that was Article 14.
Yes, the ADUs.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure I understand the logistics. Thank you, Ellen.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
you
I
should-
guess this is, as I said, this is an unusual situation, and I've thought pretty carefully about this, and I want to accord elected board members, whether it's the planning board or the select board, fair and equal treatment, whether they're in the majority or not.
Thank you. Okay,
So, do you want to keep going, or do you want to?
do you want to go through the individual at this point?
Did anything change?
No,
No.
Okay.
no, there's not change.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well,
So I think the goal will be to get through that,
excuse me,
Article 1.
Alan?
excuse me, Greg.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We touched on the fact that the vote under Article 14 with respect to the select board's recommendation was 3-2. Let me just ask whether either Brian or Kathy would like to be recognized to speak on that one.
And before we do, I am going to say that if we do have one minority speak, we should have a majority person speak as well.
Yeah, this is different, I think. Me personally, these are planning board articles. We are in a different position there. I personally don't feel the need to speak on it.
I would agree. I think that that's my personal opinion based on as a resident, not as a member of the select board.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Okay, good.
all right. Alan, anything else?
No, I think that's all. Thank you.
So we
Sorry,
will,
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, we'll wait to hear back from Alan, right?
On what?
On the,
Something, was something.
say it again?
I know it was something, I forget
It
what it
was
was.
Yeah.
Article 2, Alan was going to get back to us on
No,
whether
Article 2
Oh,
on
yeah.
the,
discussion on the merits will be.
Yeah,
Oh, right,
regarding the,
right, Yep,
okay,
yep. Yeah, and whether to allow discussion of the alternatives.
okay.
I'm leaning against it. but,
Okay.
Maybe, I think Michelle was gonna stay on for your discussion of the executive session that's coming up. And
Mhm.
maybe while you deal with the other agenda items between now and then, she and I could have a chance to talk offline and we can get back to you in short order.
That'll be good. Okay, thank you.
Michelle? She was on for a moment. There she is.
coming back.
Can I give you a call? Okay. So I'm gonna mute and stop the video.
Okay.
See you in a bit. Okay.
So I was just going to comment that Article 14 and 15 are paired.
Mhm.
So
Right.
if 14 is approved, then Article 15 would be passed over.
Right.
Article 14 fails, then Article 15 would be taken up. So just highlighting that.
Okay, any other questions on the review of special town meeting? Okay. Liaison updates. I do not have any, except to say that the Harbor Advisory Committee just had a new member appointed. And that Essex County has a bit of a COVID surge, the numbers right now. Okay. Anne, you have school committee Concom?
I missed the Concom meeting. It was an ordinary business meeting. They considered permits, and so there really is no news from it. They're not doing any policy. They were not doing any policy issues. The school committee has approved a district plan and school plans, which are changing the focus from response to intervention and dealing to it's hard to put it in a very few words, but they are working on being sure that every child reaches his or her total potential, and that I don't know what budget impact that's going to have, and they don't either yet.
That'd be a tough one.
So I'm paying attention. They are just starting to work on their budget, and it will be interesting. They are looking for, as I said before, they are looking for course correction, and the question is whether it will be enough to solve the current budget problems, or it will be somewhat a more aspirational. And, we will see.
We will.
At their next meeting, they will be getting a report from the Habib organization, which does evaluates facilities. They are looking at, especially at the state of the Essex Elementary School, and whether the repairs on it in the next 10 years would be money well spent.
Yep.
Or whether it makes sense to move up the process of replacing that school, or doing a major refit.
Right.
And that report will have something to do, will have some effect on what their
Does
the
any,
rest of their budget goes.
and does anybody remember how many more years before we retire the debt on the high school? Is that
34, I believe.
4 more years?
34.
34.
2034.
Wow, okay,
2034?
33 or 34.
okay. All right, thank
And
you,
the
Ann.
other thing that they need to, that Habib will be looking at is that the quote, new high school is now 13 years old. And it's expected to have a 50-year life cycle, but there are some pieces, including science labs and climate, that may need to be looked at earlier.
Okay. Thank you. Brian, Parks and Rec or Library?
Pickleball. It's still very contentious, although it should be quieting down for a while now.
With the one resident.
With the one resident.
Yep.
And daylight savings time.
Daylight savings time, cold, although I'm, you know, I bet you they're out there playing all the time. There were some recommendations by another board that kind of created some controversy as well. I think we're gonna wait to see what happens when the sound attenuation plan, or whatever they can come up with in the spring. So at this point, hopefully it'll quiet down along with the pickleball itself. Nothing with the library, I haven't checked in with them.
Okay, Kathy.
The last planning board meeting, right after we last met, other than the articles for the town meeting, 1024 planning board meeting, Cell Signaling Technologies gave an update on their status. And it looked as though they selected their design team and are in their master planning process. I believe they said they are shooting for occupancy in 2025, if I'm not mistaken. So just, they gave an overview, and everything else, I think we've already talked about town planner backfill, the site visits for the harbor boat ride, and also the Pine Street field. They were supposed to have a site visit for that as well. That's all I have.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, DPW's doing fine, especially with its high-profile School Street project, so that's good. With regard to the Water Task Force, there was a meeting that was held about a week or so ago. The task force, I think, is on schedule to deliver the select board a preliminary list of recommendations, certainly by the end of the year. We did get a report from one of our consultants this past week with regard to Gravelly Pond and where it was getting its water from, and when I say where specifically within the pond.
Yeah.
The water was coming, and that was educational in terms of looking at possibly drilling wells as lead indicators of what condition that water might be in with regard to purity, et cetera. So that's continuing to move along.
When are we gonna hear back from them?
By the end of the year.
Okay, that takes care of liaison updates. And we move to entertainment license for Boo Bird. Okay, and it says that you are proposing live entertainment
Becky?
of, yes, Alan?
Sorry. Could I just interrupt to report back?
Sure.
Okay, so with respect to Article 2, I've been able to confer with town council. She's very helpful as always. And she and I agree that as currently framed, the motion under Article 2 would not need to involve discussion of whether the rebuild or the purchase of a new ambulance is the better alternative.
Okay.
Because it's not town meeting's decision to choose between the two. It's up to the board of selectmen. The select board. And it's possible there could be an amendment that would change that, an amendment to the main motion, but as currently framed, I think it would not. The discussion of the merits of the two alternatives would not be appropriate.
Thank you, Alan.
You are welcome.
Right. Good times at Boo Bird. 1, 2, 3 people. Limited vocal.
I will sign off if there's nothing else for me on town meeting.
I think that's it. Thank you,
Okay.
Alan.
Thank you very much.
So we have limited vocal amplification and no percussion during normal hours of operation. So the request is for Sunday brunch and occasional events. Okay. And just state your name and,
My name is Mary Ann Wood, I'm the manager and owner of Boo Bird in Central Street for Manchester. I'm sorry, I have a very low voice. I think I get.
it's okay, it's okay.
And yes, we're looking for an entertainment license. We've had a lot of requests from customers and people around that are looking for something interesting to do on the weekends. We originally were thinking that we would love to have a Sunday brunch, probably with some very light music in the background. And maybe once in a while have somebody playing the guitar, some music in the corner, just for people to listen to. Just thought that might be nice.
Out of curiosity, where would they be?
So I think I would place them where the first booth is in the corner, remove that booth and put it somewhere else.
Yep.
That way the music would actually enter the room and not go out of the room at the windows, and it would be absorbed by all the cork that we put on the walls. So that was my thinking, that will always go back into the room. But even, I wasn't even sure if I needed an entertainment license for other, like small, even like a trivia or something like that. So I just wanted to make sure I had it.
Okay, thank you. John Brown?
I'm looking forward to it.
Yay.
Kathy Bellata?
This question, Boo Bird has a wonderful open door,
Yes.
would the doors be open or closed?
Well, it would probably depend on the type of day and the type of music and the, I wouldn't have them open late at night, you know what I mean, I don't wanna disturb my
That's my only
neighbors.
question. I think
So,
I'm looking forward to it. But I also can hear it from my balcony, so just the neighbors, and it's a densely populated area, and I would like to see the doors remain closed unless it's going to be a special event. You know, sometimes there are events at the Legion and they're outdoors, and that's fine.
You want my doors
But
closed when
not
there's-
every single weekend night. with the
But
door,
that's,
You know,
they won't be having any, you know, no percussion, so we're not having drums, anything like that.
I need a clarification, are you asking me to close my doors at all times?
no, I'm asking what the procedure is
Well,
for,
usually we close the door on, so but there is no sound ordinance in this town.
Right.
But normally I do that, and I look around and if I notice that it's like seeming that's loud, I shut the doors. And now that it's winter, we really, this was a very unique weekend to have those doors open, but it gets cold in there.
right.
And we can always
We
revisit.
can revisit, right?
Yeah.
And I tell the people usually, please tell me how to.
Yeah.
I'm not going to disturb my
Yeah.
neighbors. I don't.
Appreciate it.
And I block every, even when we leave at night, I'm like, the trash out at night.
No, it's been a great addition to the neighborhood, really.
Yep.
I do want to make sure.
Brian?
I got nothing.
Ann?
Sounds great.
Okay, no further questions. May I have a motion?
The motion's, make a motion to approve the entertainment license for Bluebird as written.
At 26 Central Street. Do we want to have a friendly amendment added to that to have an end time for the music?
What are the current hours? Till 11?
We are open from, we can be open, we're really open from like 12 to 10. But on the weekends, we stay open till midnight. And then on the weekdays, my license just was amended, so I can open at 10, but we have.
I could offer a friendly amendment to just have, if the doors are open, I'd like the music to end by 9. If the doors are, I'm not worried about the doors being closed and playing music till midnight, I'm totally fine with that. But, you know, people may have small children, the dogs can get by, who knows? If the music's playing, I'd like the doors closed at 9 or the music stopped at 9. That would be my.
Brian, would you accept that friendly amendment?
I'll accept that.
Okay, moved by Brian. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll say seconded by Kathy Bellata. Roll call vote. John Rao,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
Ann Harrison.
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes. Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just ask a question of clarification. With bingo or trivia, does that qualify as entertainment? I was just,
No,
couldn't find much on it. Each town is a little different. so-
no,
Okay.
that's,
Well, that's what I was thinking, I was like, I should just cover it. Just make sure it's
yeah.
So is it just music or what actually includes entertainment? Do you know?
Well, I would say my understanding is that it's any performance, whether it's comedians, music,
Okay.
things of that nature.
With or without poll.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
that's it.
Thank you very much.